What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Thursday, April 4th, 2024, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now, it is 15:30 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we currently have U.S. nuclear forces on high alert. We have two presidential Doomsday planes in the air this afternoon, and we also have some B-2 stealth bombers that were spotted over central Missouri getting aerially refueled. So, what you're looking at here is a live flight tracker, and you can see here one presidential Doomsday plane over Kansas, and it was flying off the coast of Corpus Christi earlier this afternoon for a long period of time, and it was doing the same thing just 2 days ago. And also over here, we have another presidential Doomsday plane that took off from DC and it went to Ohio. And now it's turning around and coming back. This is actually where Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is in Dayton, Ohio, which is like the Area 51 of the eastern U.S. Here we have a U.S. nuclear war command and control plane flying over western North Carolina, heading towards Tennessee. And we also have a nuke sniffer plane. These planes are responsible for detecting radiation in the atmosphere. And it's over Nebraska somewhere right now, eastern Nebraska, and it went off of the flight tracker. So it turned its transponder off. So this is very, very concerning. Two presidential Doomsday planes, nuclear war command and control plane, and then the nuke sniffer. And then this is where the B-2 stealth bomber was getting aerially refueled near Osage Beach, Missouri. You can see it was looping here really low, close to Lake of the Ozarks and Warsaw, Missouri. And I actually have a picture from a subscriber who sent me this in the Lake of the Ozarks region. So you can see the B-2 stealth bomber flying behind the aerial refueler. So this is extremely concerning. It means our nuclear forces are on high alert right now. Okay, to have a B-2 stealth bomber getting aerially refueled over the continental U.S. is extremely unusual unless they're doing some type of an exercise. And two presidential Doomsday planes in the air at the same time is also very, very unusual. And I think this is because of the situation with Iran and Israel. Israel assassinated the commander of the IRGC Quds Force responsible for operations in Syria and Lebanon several days ago in an airstrike on the Iranian consulate building in Damascus, Syria. The entire consulate was leveled by this Israeli airstrike. And guys, embassies and consulates are considered the territory of that country. So that's the equivalent of Israel launching a missile into Iran. Okay. So this is very serious. Iran has issued multiple threats saying they're going to respond harshly, that they reserve the right to an equal response. They sent a message to the UN Security Council saying that they're preparing an equal response and that it's going to be harsh. We've already seen people evacuating from various parts of Israel, including Tel Aviv, because Tel Aviv is the economic center of Israel. And I shared some footage last night of just hundreds and hundreds of people leaving from Tel Aviv, stuck in traffic. Okay. So this is an extremely serious situation. We also have some very, very serious words coming from Russia today. So the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters today that relations between NATO and Russia have now slipped to the level of direct confrontation, and said that NATO was already involved in the conflict surrounding Ukraine and continues to move towards our borders and expand its military infrastructure towards our borders. Wow, guys, very, very concerning. And Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko said in an interview with Sputnik today that the situation in the Russia-NATO relations has been deteriorating predictably and deliberately, and communication channels have been reduced to a critically low level. He also said that Macron's words on possibly sending troops to Ukraine were unacceptable. He said, as a result of the adventurous actions of even one or two NATO member states, the Ukrainian crisis could go beyond its geographic boundaries and reach a completely different scale. Wow, guys, very strong words there. And Israel's Ministry of Health has summoned all hospital managers to a meeting today to prepare for the threats from Iran. Hospital managers are asked to ensure adequate staffing this weekend. This update was sponsored by My Patriot Supply. Guys, My Patriot Supply has brought back their 25% discount on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the discount, you got to use the link preparewithnyprepper.com. And the link is in the description below this video. But this 3-month emergency food supply has a 25-year shelf life. It includes over 2,000 calories per day, breakfasts, lunches, dinners, drinks, and snacks, all contained within 6 rugged water-resistant buckets, and free shipping is included. So use the link preparewithnyprepper.com to get $200 off or 25% off of the My Patriot Supply 3-month emergency food supply. The link is in the description below this video. Free shipping is included. They also have a general store where they sell all kinds of prepping and survival products, and they're always running various discounts. And to get to their general store, you just got to click on the My Patriot Supply logo when you get to preparewithnyprepper.com at the top of the page, and you'll see their general store where they sell all kinds of prepping and survival products, and they're always running discounts here. So use the link preparewithnyprepper.com to get 25% off of the My Patriot Supply 3-month emergency food supply, and the link is in the description below this video. And Israeli News 12 says that Israel understands that there will be an Iranian response, and since terror attacks through Iranian emissaries are unsuccessful, Iran will try to hit Israel directly from their territory. And Israel has told U.S. officials that it will respond to any Iranian aggression after days of threats from Iran. This was reported by Al Arabiya. So Israel telling the U.S. it will respond to Iran. Okay, so this could spiral out of control very, very quickly. And that's why we have these B-2s in the air right now. That's why we have multiple Doomsday planes in the air right now and nuclear war command and control planes, because at any second, our forces could be called upon to defend Israel and attack Iran and denuclearize them, demilitarize them, bombard all their bases, use bunker busters, use earth-penetrating nuclear warheads to annihilate all of their missile bases they have under mountains. This is all planned already, guys. Now, with Biden in control, I don't know how far he would go in implementing some of these plans, but due to his reelection, he may be motivated to go all the way and launch a full-scale decapitation strike on Iran. So this way he could reelect himself, because the U.S. would be in a time of war. And all of the Israeli army soldiers have received orders to remain on their bases this weekend amid Iranian threats against Israel, with Israeli fighter pilots and air defense operators being recalled from leave. And we know that there's 3 retaliation options for Iran. The first one is they can use their proxies in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq to launch missiles and drones and rockets. The other option is that Iran launches ballistic missiles directly at Israel from Iranian territory. And the other option is that they try to infiltrate Israeli territory with proxy forces. And the Israeli government said GPS signals are now being jammed over the country to interfere with Iranian missile and drone guidance, especially around Tel Aviv, which is Israel's economic hub. And the Israeli National Insurance Institute has allegedly been hacked. The data of 8 million insured Israelis, including their personal information, their bank account data, their residence, are now at the disposal of hackers. And there's been intense fighting going on in southeastern Iran between Iranian security forces and Sunni militants in the Iranian port city of Chabahar. Reports indicate that there are multiple casualties on both sides, and fighting began last night when several Iranian weapons depots and bases came under attack by the Sunni militants. The militants have claimed that they captured the IRGC naval headquarters and at least 5 IRGC facilities, including one in the city of Perud, as well as several key roadways in the region. Okay, so most likely this is being funded by Israel and the West. They're definitely helping these militants to carry out these attacks in southeastern Iran, to open up another front for Iran to worry about. And U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken threatened Israel today, saying if we don't see the changes we need to see from Israel, there will be changes in our policy. Wow, guys, that is so arrogant. And Anthony Blinken is actually a Jew himself, and he is always throwing Israel under the bus. So if that's not proof that we're living in the end times, I don't know what other proof you need. All these countries attacking Israel now, all these proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah. Now Iran is going to launch an attack on Israel. Our own government here in America is going against Israel. Okay? This is a huge sign of the end times, including everything going on with Russia. Russia has moved tanks to the border of Israel, guys. They have moved tanks in Syria to the Golan Heights right on the border of Israel. Okay, that is extremely concerning. And if you read in the Bible, the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and 39, it talks about the Gog Magog war, which involves a Russian alliance, a Russian led alliance of Middle Eastern countries and North African countries, and they go against Israel. They try to attack Israel, and they build up a huge army right on the border of Israel. And just before they invade, God just completely wipes out all of the armies. Okay, they're not even allowed to go into Israel. Okay, so all these countries that are attacking Israel, they're going to receive punishment and severe judgment from the Lord. Okay, and a neutron reactor in Kharkiv, Ukraine was de-energized due to the shelling of Kharkiv last night, during which 4 people died. This was reported by the Ukrainian State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate. The emergency power supply system operated normally and emergency diesel generators were switched on. The radiation situation at the site is within normal limits. Okay, so a neutron reactor was de-energized last night in Kharkiv. Okay, guys, neutron radiation is no joke. That's the worst kind of radiation, okay, because you can't really block it with much besides water and concrete. Okay, it'll pass through everything. It's even more dangerous than regular gamma radiation. Okay, and one of the last 2 remaining external power lines connecting the giant Ukrainian nuclear power plant, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, to the Ukrainian power grid was damaged last night due to Russian shelling, according to Ukrainian energy company Energoatom. Russia is claiming that it was Ukraine's fault, and Ukraine is blaming Russia. So this power plant normally has like a dozen external power lines, and that's gone down to just 2 remaining. And now one of the 2 has been disconnected for some reason, probably destroyed, compromised somehow. So now this entire power plant with 6 nuclear reactors, that's like 6 Chernobyls, guys. Okay? 6 Chernobyls if this thing were to melt down. All right? This is very, very serious. If that last remaining power line goes down, this entire power plant is going to have to run off of diesel generators to keep everything going so the nuclear fuel and the spent fuel doesn't overheat and melt down. And obviously, in a war zone, that's not easy to do because you need massive diesel generators to keep a plant like this running. And so it's going to guzzle fuel. And, especially with Russia in control, we know how good Russia is at managing nuclear power plants. Not too good if you look at the situation with Chernobyl 30 plus years ago. And Ukraine Energo, the Ukrainian power company, has introduced temporary power outages in 6 parts of Ukraine. They're going to shut the electricity down from 1800 to 2200 every single night. And the regions affected are Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kirovgrad, Poltava, and Sumy. And the reason for these restrictions is the lack of sufficient generating capacity in the system after recent Russian attacks on the Ukrainian power grid. And Poland said that they're not going to be participating in the battles in Ukraine, said Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. At the moment, I can repeat what I told Macron, what I told other leaders, including President Biden. Poland does not foresee direct participation in the war on the territory of Ukraine. I want to just update you guys on the situation in Taiwan with these earthquakes. There was a 6.1 magnitude earthquake last night right offshore from the Fukushima power plant in Japan, the one that melted down and detonated 10 plus years ago. And over 1,000 people have been injured in the Taiwan quakes and 10 people killed. And what you're looking at here is some Russian presidential Doomsday planes and nuclear war command and control planes that went east to Siberia and the Urals late last night. Here we have a Tu-214 SBUS. That's Putin's Doomsday plane, a Tu-214SR, and a Tu-204-300, which are nuclear war command and control planes. And we have a massive amount of GPS jamming and electronic navigation jamming going on in the Middle East, not just in Israel, which Israel is doing on purpose to scramble guidance of any Iranian missiles, but apparently there's now jamming going on in the Persian Gulf, in the Red Sea, in the Arabian Sea, as you can see here in this picture. Okay, so this could be Iran and its proxy forces setting up jammers here to scramble any kind of allied forces GPS systems. And here we have some video footage of the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei, making a statement at the funeral procession for the IRGC officers that were killed in the Israeli airstrike in Damascus. So this is very serious, guys, for the Ayatollah Khamenei to come out of his bunker and lead a funeral procession for these IRGC officers is extremely, extremely serious, okay? And here we have a picture of all the aftershocks that have been ongoing off the coast of Taiwan after the 7.7 earthquake. I mean, these aftershocks are still ongoing, guys, okay? Dozens and dozens of aftershocks over the last day or so, over 4.0 magnitude too. And then here's the location of that 6.1 off the coast of Japan, off the coast of Fukushima, where the nuclear power plant is. And France denies Russian claims that it expressed willingness to hold dialogue on Ukraine or to discuss possible peace negotiations when the two countries' defense ministers spoke on Wednesday, according to Reuters. It is not true, a French government source said. At no moment did we show any willingness to dialogue on Ukraine or negotiations or anything like that. And Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, said that although there is currently no plan for a conversation between Putin and Macron, Putin is apparently open to dialogue. Peskov said this after Sergei Shoigu's conversation with the French defense minister, which was said to have taken place on the initiative of the French side. Pretty interesting. And a NATO official said Ukrainian drone strikes may have disrupted 10 to 15% of Russia's oil refinery capacity. Okay, which is nothing, guys. 10 to 15%. I mean, that is just a drop in the bucket for Russia. Okay, this is just more Western BS propaganda trying to make it seem like Ukraine is winning so they can justify not giving Ukraine what they need. 10 to 15% is just nothing. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said today that there are obvious Ukrainian traces in the Moscow concert hall attack. Okay, so the Russian government is continuing to say that Ukraine is responsible for this concert hall attack. We had Nikolai Patrushev, Putin's best bud, and also another former FSB agent and former FSB director, just like Putin, said the other day that Ukraine was hiring terrorists in Tajikistan to carry out operations on Russian soil. Okay. So it's just absolutely crazy, guys. And the Russian Baltic Fleet is organizing command and staff exercises. 1,500 soldiers and 80 pieces of equipment, 10 ships and boats and support units are taking part in the exercises. According to the Russian military, the aim of the exercises is to increase the combat readiness of the Baltic Fleet. Now, I've been showing you guys the last couple of days all the P-8 Poseidon sub-hunters that have been active off the coast of Kaliningrad, and now we know why, because the Russian Baltic Fleet is going to be doing some big drills here in the coming days, okay, to increase combat readiness. Isn't that interesting that the Baltic Fleet is increasing combat readiness at the same time as Belarus has put their entire military on combat alert, and they've moved mechanized brigades with hundreds of tanks and armored vehicles to just within a few miles of the Lithuanian border? Isn't that interesting? That's not a coincidence, guys. Okay? Russia and Belarus are planning something in the Baltics. I think they're going to try to go for the capital of Lithuania, Vilnius, and that's why Russia's putting their Baltic fleet on combat readiness, okay? And what you're looking at here is a U.S. reconnaissance plane that was patrolling Kaliningrad last night. And a U.S. House vote on Ukraine aid isn't likely until at least mid-April and possibly later, with Speaker Mike Johnson still searching for ways to soften opposition from Republican hardliners. So basically, the Ukrainian front lines are going to collapse in the spring, and Russia's going to make a huge breakthrough. I think they're going to go for Odessa. I think they're going to go for potentially Kyiv. I think they're going to potentially go for Kharkiv. We have multiple Russian allies telling their citizens to get out of Kharkiv and Odessa and Kyiv. Kazakhstan, China, and some other Russian allied countries have told their citizens through local embassies in Ukraine to get out of Kharkiv, get out of Odessa, and Ukraine has been fortifying Odessa and Kyiv and Dnipropetrovsk like crazy because they know that Russia's going to smash the front lines and penetrate and go all the way to these cities, potentially all the way to the Dnipro River, which would be catastrophic. Okay, that would be a disaster. And it's all the West's fault because they didn't give Ukraine what they needed at the proper time. Okay, when Ukraine had the Russian forces on the run in Kherson and in Kupiansk, remember when the Russians were literally running, they were dropping all their equipment and just fleeing for their lives? That was the time to give Ukraine all the equipment that we're giving them now. Okay, all the Leopard tanks, all the long-range missiles, the F-16s. They should have already had that and millions of shells to back it up and thousands of missiles. And that would have been the opportunity for a counterattack, not wait another year to start a counterattack and give Russia an entire year to build these massive fortifications that were impenetrable. Okay? The West is messing around and Russia is laughing. We're not united. We're not organized. We're not determined. Our societies are not on a war footing while Russia is on a war footing. Everybody makes fun of Russian soldiers, how they don't have anything to eat. They don't have boots. Their rifles don't work. They have 2 weeks of training. But guess what? Russia's getting it done, okay? They're getting it done, and we're not. We're losing because instead of doing what needs to be done like Russia's doing, we're messing around, okay? And we're making fun of Russia and Russian forces and, laughing about them, but they're actually getting the job done and we're not, okay? That doesn't mean that I support Russia or I'm pro-Russia or anything like that in the war in Ukraine. It's just the reality of the situation, okay? And, the same thing is happening now with these F-16s, okay? It's just like with the Leopard tanks. They thought last year, oh, we're going to give Ukraine Leopards. We're going to give them M1 Abrams. We're going to give them Bradleys. And that's going to somehow miraculously turn the war around. And they're going to be able to smash through miles and miles of defense lines with those, wonder weapons, basically, Well, they didn't have air cover. They didn't have enough ammunition. And because of that, those Leopard tanks were basically destroyed by Russian drones. Millions and millions of dollars worth of Western tanks destroyed by cheap Russian drones because the West has no plan, they have no strategy, and Russia knows it, and they're going to take advantage of it. Okay, they know that our leaders are soft and weak, and they're more preoccupied with climate change and stuff like that rather than doing what needs to be done, okay? And they're going to take advantage of it. And I'm telling you guys, this spring and this summer, we're going to see potentially 2 fronts opening up. We're going to have Russia launching a massive new offensive against Ukraine, and then Belarus is going to try to go into Lithuania because they know we're weak. They've sent several missiles into Poland that were not shot down. Russia sent 4 missiles into Poland, and they were not shot down. NATO forbade Poland from shooting down those missiles. They said, Poland, you're not allowed to shoot those missiles down. Okay? So they know NATO's weak, and they're going to take advantage of it. And Belgorod, the city in Russia close to Ukraine, has been shelled every single day for the past 3 weeks. And Russia's defense ministry claimed on April 4th that its forces downed 3 Ukrainian drones over Belgorod and 2 more over the Tula Oblast. Finland is permanently extending its border closure with Russia. That's crazy, guys. Finland has already shut their entire border down with Russia, and now they're permanently extending that until further notice, basically. And the Romanian prime minister said that he supports the idea of unifying Moldova with Romania, either within the EU or through other means. Wow. And just the other day, the Romanian parliament passed a law allowing the Romanian military to protect Romanians in other parts of the world. And in Moldova, over 50% of the people are Romanian citizens, okay? So Romania is obviously concerned about what's going on in Ukraine now, and they're afraid that if Russia smashes the front lines, which they will, they're going to go for Odessa, and then they could potentially go for Moldova after that. And from April 2nd to April 3rd on the Polish border with Belarus, there were 416 attempts of illegal entry into Poland recorded by the Polish border guards. It seems as though Belarus is beginning another hybrid attack on Poland by releasing Middle Eastern migrants. And the US, Britain, and France opposed a Russian-drafted UN Security Council statement that would have condemned an attack on Iran's embassy in Syria by Israel. And NATO countries decided to create an alliance mission in Ukraine, according to the foreign minister of Poland, Sikorski. The creation of the mission does not mean direct entry into the conflict, but it does mean that we will now be able to use NATO's coordination, training, and planning capabilities to support Ukraine in a more coordinated way. And NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said, "We are not talking about turning NATO into a global alliance. NATO remains an alliance of North America and Europe." And the Prime Minister of Ukraine met with the Prime Minister of Latvia, and apparently Latvia is ready to allocate 0.25% of their GDP to Ukraine for helping them in the war. And Polish President Andrzej Duda said all NATO countries should implement a clear and transparent policy of strengthening security. And he said this at the 75th anniversary of NATO. He said, "Security in NATO is a collective security. We all need to have well-equipped, functioning armies. That is why I propose that the level of minimum spending in the North Atlantic Alliance countries be raised to 3% of GDP. And we know that Poland has raised their spending to 4% of GDP, making them the highest spender in NATO on military equipment. And the Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan went to Brussels for the NATO 75th anniversary meeting. And apparently he's going to be meeting the U.S. Secretary of State and the head of the European Commission there. So that's pretty interesting. Looks like Armenia is trying to get into NATO and get into the EU. And Germany will immediately initiate a search for Patriot air defense systems for Ukraine. They're going to be looking all over the world, including in Europe, for Patriot air defense systems they can send to Ukraine. And some Western luxury brands have suspended their operations in the Russian market permanently and have left themselves with empty boutiques in the most exclusive locations in Russian cities. Salons have been closed for the past 2 years in hopes of ending the war and returning normal trade relations between Russia and the West. Now the giants of the luxury goods markets are starting to give up and are breaking or not renewing lease agreements of their boutiques in Russia. So another blow to Russian society. And secret CIA bases are preparing for escalation against the south and east of Venezuela from the Essequibo region of Guyana, according to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. He's a communist, by the way. According to Maduro, the president of Guyana does not govern Guyana, and that Guyana is governed by the U.S. military Southern Command, the CIA, and ExxonMobil. And the U.S. Army plans to deploy a new medium-range missile launcher in the Asia-Pacific region by the end of the year that could act as a deterrent against China, according to General Charles Flynn. So that's pretty interesting. And I want to show you guys some flight paths here in South Korea. Here we have a U.S. AWACS plane and a U.S. RQ-4 Global Hawk reconnaissance plane, and they were patrolling the border of North Korea, South Korea last night. And I want to show you guys some footage of these Ukrainian defense lines that are going up all along the front lines. Ukraine is scrambling to build defense lines. You can see all these dragon's teeth here, and they've also been digging trenches, anti-tank trenches, which you're going to see in a moment. But this line is definitely not as thick as the Surovikin line that the Russians built. Hopefully, Ukraine will fortify this line even more, but you can see actually this massive trench here. So they're digging these huge anti-tank trenches. These are basically to stop tanks. So tanks can't go through that trench because it's too deep. So when they go in, the front of the tank gets stuck and they have to get pulled out by either another tank or a recovery vehicle. So they're just building these trenches, and then they have some dragon's teeth there. But you can see that the dragon's teeth are not particularly long. Okay, if you remember the footage of the Russian defense lines, these dragon's teeth would span for miles and miles and miles. I mean, the Russians really built massive defense lines. But again, Western media didn't show that because they wanted you to think that Russia's not coordinated, that they're not trained well, that they don't know what they're doing, that their soldiers don't have food. Well, Russia built a successful defense line to stop the Ukrainian counteroffensive. They succeeded in that. They got the best of the West. They beat us, okay? And the Western media continues to make it seem like the Biden administration and these NATO leaders are like geniuses, and that they're going to strategically weaken Russia, which is not happening. Okay, Russia's economy is still functioning. The sanctions were useless. They're continuing to mobilize, and they're actually gaining momentum now. You have to remember, the more territory that Russia occupies, they can use that territory to feed their war machine. Okay, they've occupied thousands of square miles of Ukrainian farmland and important cities that they can now plug into their economy. Okay, so that's the latest breaking news that I have. I will be back later with another update on the situation with Israel, but it looks like any hour, any day now, Iran is going to launch this massive strike on Israel, and we have U.S. nuclear forces on high alert for that today. So I'll monitor the situation and I will update you later. And until then, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere. Guys, the world is getting crazier by the day. We're on the verge of World War III. The U.S. is drowning in trillions of dollars in debt. Inflation is at an all-time high, and there's no end in sight. So you need to prepare your finances for the future with precious metals. Precious metals are a great way to protect your hard-earned savings and retirement against inflation and the uncertainty of the stock market. Also, precious metals are good to have for the purposes of preparedness, to be able to barter with people for essential supplies if the grid goes down. Every prepper should have at least a small amount of silver coins. The company I trust for my precious metals is Midas Gold Group. Text NYPrepper to 232425 for free information on precious metals. Midas Gold Group is 100% veteran owned and supports veterans through the Wounded Warrior Project. Midas Gold Group will work with you to convert part of your retirement savings into gold or to set up a gold IRA. And unlike many precious metals dealers, Midas Gold Group offers precious metals in small denominations, which is great for preparedness, so you have something tangible to use for bartering when the grid goes down. Precious metals have continuously risen in price over the past 100 years and are considered a safe investment. So text NYPrepper to 232425 for free information and to get started today.